Okay, remember that they are changing my voice. So this should be part 2 of my War on Poverty plan video. I'm going to explain some justifications here, and I'm just going to go through this quickly. If there's any questions, put in the comments, try to contact me, what have you. But I think these 16 points I'm going to make at first are, as the first thing I do, that they're pretty self-explanatory. Then we'll shoot through Isaiah 58 and go over some of the key points again and wrap this up. Okay, so point number 1, they failed to properly wage the war on drugs and to manage things correctly. Point number 2, they exploited the workforce, and even Republicans, the vast majority of Republicans would agree. Point number 3, they did not provide the services needed to help people get on their feet and did not make them aware of their resources effectively enough. And this goes back a long time. Point number 4, the school system is a sick joke. The word school is even the word looks spelled backwards, except for it's spelled L-O-O-H-C-S instead of L-O-O-K-S. That's not a coincidence, as a lot of these subjects are unnecessary, right? I've never needed to use the sciences in my life. I've never needed to use the history that I've learned at school in my life. The history that I use for my videos is from documentaries, is from my own research. Okay, when I graduated college, and I went to several community colleges. Point number 5, inmates get 3 hots in a cot, so why wouldn't homeless people and poor people, right? Point number 6, there's around 60 trillion or so in assets and liquid wealth just sitting around causing inflation. Okay, now the number is, more than that, maybe 100 trillion. Okay, so it can be used more effectively is the point. Not that every penny is causing inflation and is a waste, but it can be used more effectively. Point number 7, it costs money to clean up encampments. Point number 8, California had enough in its surplus to end homelessness, and poor governance, was the reason why they didn't. The mismanagement of funds, and everyone knows that. So we need a different group besides the government to control the War on Poverty plan with FBI agents to make sure there's no fraud going on. And transparency, signs on the sites that show how much it costs, and comparisons to private purchases, websites, YouTube channels, the works. Except for without the political BS, the honest truth about it. The real truth. Point number 9, for just 50 cents a month on average for less than millionaires and $20 a month on average for millionaires, we could build 200,000 tiny homes a year for the homeless at $30,000 each, which includes land purchases and running water, mattress, and AC, and what have you. Now, when you look at this thing, my plan is for far more than this, right? And it's a tax aimed mostly at the rich. There's vice taxes plans and what have you. But this is showing you that even if they just pass that plan, we can end homelessness. But they won't do it. And so they owe us as a society. They owe the poor. They owe the homeless. They owe the people who want this plan. And the people who don't want this plan are just trying to help them get away with theft and evil and what have you. And we'll get into that when we read Isaiah 58 and think about it in terms of universal morals without, people's specific interpretations based on their denomination or church or whatever. Point number 10. We could build a surplus and combat the stress of potentially going homeless that many people live with. Point number 11, many rich people avoid paying taxes. Point number 12, we would have a cleaner nation, a more organized nation. Point number 13, it would lower the crime rate. Point number 14, there would be better mental health in the nation. Point number 15, the homeless would be cleaner and more hygienic. Point number 16, it would help combat the spread of STDs as the need for people to prostitute themselves would be reduced. So I'll put it on the screen, but I suggest you listen to this part in the first 4 minutes of this video or whatever again and again, at least 2 or 3 times to kind of get a good feel for my arguments as I got to move through this quickly. Isaiah 58. Shout it aloud, do not hold back, raise your voice like a trumpet. Declare to my people their rebellion and to the descendants of Jacob their sins. And that means everybody, right? Galatians 3:28, not just the Jews, right? I'm going to start picking on the Jews. Declare to everybody who is like the people in the Bible who are sinning, be they Romans, Jews, Philistines, whatever, right? If they're in the same spirits of sin and cheat me out of my right to lead, you should declare it to them. and it should be in the divine order first, right? First remove the log of rebellion and cheating me out of my right to leave from your own eye. Then you can remove the speck from other people's eyes, as they say in Matthew 7. For day after day they seek me out. They seem eager to know my ways, as if they were a nation that does what is right and has not forsaken the commands of its God. They ask me for just decisions and seem eager for God to come near them. Why have we fasted, they say, and you have not seen it? Why have we humbled ourselves and you have not noticed? Yet on the day of your fasting, you do as you please and exploit your workers. See right here, tell the Christian conservative who is in denial, okay, if he doesn't want the plan, that is. It says in Isaiah 58, verse 3, you do as you please and exploit your workers. Okay, so what were they referring to? Are they referring to just straight up robbing them at gunpoint? No. It's the particular financial relationship that they have with their workers and how it is in the bigger picture. Your fasting ends in quarreling and strife and in striking each other with wicked fists. You cannot fast as you do today and expect your voice to be heard on high. A lot of people don't want me to say this, but it has implications in brawling, bar brawls, street fights, boxing, MMA fighting, at bare knuckle boxing, anything like this. Hey, they're striking each other with wicked fists, literally and otherwise. Okay. Now again, those things are sports. Whether or not you should do it is another issue, but it shows you the overall evil that's being complained about here, and it connects to the poor and how poor people are treated, right? A lot of these people with dreams to be MMA fighters, they're poor people who don't think they're going to do well in college because of the way the school system's structured. There's a lot of reasons I'm right. Is this the kind of fasting I've chosen? Only a day for people to humble themselves? Is it only for bowing one's head like a reed and for lying in sackcloth and ashes? Is that what you call a fast, a day acceptable to the Lord? So it's not just how you dress and how you're behaving, right? It's what you're doing with your life, right? Are you doing the work of God, or are you just, not eating for a day or something and dressing like a poor person? Is this not the kind of fasting I've chosen, to loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? That includes the yoke of economic oppression, romantic oppression, social oppression, political oppression, okay, religious oppression, lying about the moral order and who people are, and so on and so forth. Psychological warfare. Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter when you see the naked to clothe them, and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood? And not the way that California and the world has been doing. I never even heard of a place that effectively houses the homeless. There's places that are doing a much better job, but they're not doing the optimum job, and they're not launching massive food programs. Okay, this is not Stalin in Russia. This is like 100 years later or whatever. People can do much better than what the Russians were trying to do under Stalin. It failed miserably. They can actually look at what we've learned in regards to the agricultural sciences and apply them. Well, I'm running out of time, so let me just go through this quickly here. Okay. Then, and to not turn away from your own flesh and blood. Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. So only then will you have the light of justice, the light of God, the light of Christ, being in the divine order, and the light conveyed through the gate to you and to the world. And of course, this can't be done after my flesh dies. But the point here this video is not about going to heaven or not, and people being cut off after my flesh dies. It is about how the Bible says that they're supposed to rally to me and pass the war on poverty plan as soon as possible. I mean, run, not walk, to do it. And hit the streets in force and protest peacefully and demand a response. Then you will call, and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help, and you will say, here am I. If you do away with the yoke of oppression, the pointing finger and malicious talk, and if you spend yourself on behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness, and the night will become like noonday. The Lord will guide you always. He will satisfy your needs in a sun-scorched land, and he will strengthen your frame, and you will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. Your people will build their ancient ruins and will raise up the age-old foundations. You will be called repairer of broken walls, restorer of streets with dwellings. If you keep your feet from breaking the Sabbath and from doing as you please on my holy day, if you call the Sabbath a delight and the Lord's holy day honorable, and if you honor it by not going your own way and by not doing as you please or speaking idle words, then you will find your joy in the Lord, and I will cause you to ride in triumph on the heights of the land, and to feast on your inheritance, on the inheritance of your father Jacob, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken.